All right, welcome everybody. All right, everybody. In today's Hot Takes episode, we are going to do a fun conversation about Kindle Direct Publishing, KDP, metrics we love. And the squad here is doing a little intimidated by the topic because they're not publishers. Chris and I are going to jump into it though. And I know all of us have content for this because at the end of the day, this is about Amazon, both advertising and just product sales. So just product listings. Books are no different. Well, maybe no different than regular products. So let's in it today, guys. I'm happy to go around the table and share insights and perspective takes on what KDP metrics we love. Anybody want to start the conversation?
They sell books on Amazon?
You're Kyle, go.
Yeah. Well, I guess historically that's how Amazon got it started. But I mean, now everyone thinks about it as just sort of a, pitch your private label product. But it's probably, I don't know this definitively, but I would say it's got to be at least one of the, if not the largest digital platform for sales on the planet. I would assume that Kindle sales dominates everything else, or pretty close. So it's exciting, and I do think that there's definitely opportunities to bolt on digital products to any physical products business. It is, we've talked about it before on this show for sure. So I'm excited to kind of get and learn a little bit more about KDP and what should I be paying attention to.
Well, Jason, you kind of said it at the beginning, where like me and you have published, you and I, my grammar's bad today. Yeah, and Kyle and Michael really haven't published. So, but I don't think there's as big a disconnect as there really is in terms of like, we know the inside and like, oh, if you've never done it before, what's it going to be like? But I know that it feels like that because I've coached enough people, and once they upload their first book and they're like flabbergasted, they're like, Chris, that was like just as easy as you've been saying for the past 10 years. I was like, exactly, like over and over and over again. Like it's repeated. That's why I'm trying to like kind of hammer this home to people that I get. It's going to sound like, oh, publish a book. This doesn't have to do with me. I sell physical products. I'm wholesale and private label. No, books can add so much in terms of marketability, establishing a level of expertise, bundling, like complementary products. There are so many opportunities. That the biggest problem is, well, which opportunity are you going to pursue, depending on what you are already doing, either as a seller or as someone who's trying to get into the world of selling and entrepreneurship, or even just new into Amazon. Books are not going anywhere. There was an article that came out. It said Kindle sales have overtaken physical book sales. And they got all like jumpy about it, like, oh, the books are in decline. No, year over year, physical books were up year over year, that exact same year. Okay, so books aren't going anywhere. It's people's preferred method of gathering information. They buy digital and physical books. It's so easy to offer both. But Kyle, I think you're right. Amazon may be the largest digital product site, like a marketplace. And that's essentially what you're doing. You have a digital product that can be sold on Amazon as a digital product if you want, but also converted into a physical product, offered for sale, Prime eligible, completely hands off, for free. Like it's so good that to me, I am convinced everybody has this opportunity to say, look, how can I use KDP in my business, whether digital or physical or a mix or both, or for profit or for marketability or for exposure? There are a lot of variables that go in there, but I feel everybody's going to end up somewhere on that line, and they're going to be glad that they spent the time taking a look at it. I'm convinced, 100%.
You are a salesman for it all the way. Okay, but let's talk about that. The metrics, man. The metrics. What metrics do we like? Michael, you want to weigh in on a metric that you think is most important for Amazon sales in general, or do you want me to lead with one?
Well, all I would say is if it's an Amazon metric, one of the reasons, just to kind of follow up and lead us back to metrics, one of the reasons that somebody who already sells on Amazon to consider KDP is you've got half the battle done because you understand the Amazon platform and the metrics, which people starting off without product or KDP don't have that grid. But Jason, I'd love to hear from you because I do not sell KDP books, although I really am working on developing a book right now, and I'm really convinced that my clients, with what I just said, really should be moving out of just physical products and going to digital. So
Yeah.
I'm all ears. Tell us, what's the answer? What should we be looking for, man? What are the key metrics?
Well, the metric that I think is top for, in my way of thinking of it now, wasn't what I thought 5 or 10 years ago. But the metric that I think is the number one metric is reviews. And I used to think that it was bestseller rank, which would be a different metric we could talk about. And I used to think maybe it was ROAS, which is an ad-centric metric. But more and more of what I'm thinking is just reviews. And that's interesting because reviews are a metric that you can engineer in legitimate ways in a book, like asking people to leave you a review. The better you are at doing that, the more reviews you get. And I think reviews are really central. I would be very interested in your guys' perspective from the off of the Kindle sections point of view on Amazon sales, how important you think reviews are. And then happy to chat about those other metrics I just mentioned as well, BSR as well as ROAS. I think those deserve conversation here. But what are your thoughts just on the topic of the number of reviews you get on your product is central to the success of it? Any thoughts on that, Kyle or Michael, from your point of views?
Yeah, I think that reviews have always mattered on a platform, especially when you have multiple options, right? Like you might have a book, but I can pretty much guarantee that you're not going to have the only book alternative on Amazon. I mean, even Amazon's a big marketplace and there's a lot of topics, but there's probably going to be alternative books to your book that would be there. And the only way that people sort of make the determination of what book to buy or what product to buy is to look at what other people have said. It's social proof. And so I think reviews have always mattered. They probably have mattered more, to your point, Jason, than what we've maybe given them a little bit of credit for. But I think it becomes more so in the book space because there are so many. I mean, talk about a category on Amazon that has millions and millions of products. KDP in books definitely do. So in order to stand out, I think reviews definitely have to be considered as a key metric.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I would say, I mean, as I say, I don't have KDP selling experience. From the physical product side, I think getting reviews should be a great obsession of, and is, of the really successful sellers I know. And there are ways to engineer it. Some legit, some not. Legit is the only way I'd advise anyone to do it. Really seriously, don't try and follow Amazon's algorithm. With books, it's interesting. I only really have an experience as a consumer, and maybe I consume in a different way, but I don't tend to go on Amazon to buy a book based on keyword generic research, unlike with products. So I tend to go on Amazon because I've heard about an author from somebody else. That's word of mouth. Often it's you, Jason. Like I've bought several books on the fact that you mentioned it in the podcast. I'm like, I've got to find out what this gold wrap book's about, or Porter's Forces of Strategy and stuff like that. Or I've heard them on a podcast or some other form where it isn't actually keyword driven. So when I go on, I just kind of ignore the reviews unless they're really dreadful. So my buyer journey is quite different for books than for physical products on Amazon. I don't know whether that's typical or just me.
Yeah.
I just thought I'd put it out there.
No,
what are your thoughts?
That's interesting. Yeah.
I don't
Chris,
think that's. Oh, sorry. Let me
just
just layer in on that. I don't think that that's actually dissimilar to buying physical products on Amazon either. I think that the buyer journey really does start in multiple locations and just has a tendency to end up on Amazon as part of the vetting process. I think, what was it, close to 60% of all like physical e-commerce product searches start on Amazon in the US. But oftentimes the discoverability of those products is occurring on social, it's occurring by word of mouth, it's occurring on like Google when they're searching, and then they see it. I'm like, oh, I should just go look on Amazon. Even in the physical store, they'll be like going by and like, oh, I should just check that real quick on my Amazon app and see how much, if I can find it on Amazon. And so I think that is definitely part of the buying experience on books and physical products.
Yeah. Chris, what do you think?
You know what I think people are forgetting is how smart customers are, right? Because it sounds so normal for us to sit back and be like, oh, the customers, they go to Amazon first and they look at reviews and like where the buying process starts. And it makes sense when you think about it, but commonly we don't think about it that way. At least I don't. But just as we're having this conversation, I'm like, dude, customers are smart. They're gonna look at the reviews. They're gonna be able to tell fake reviews. They're gonna be able to say, look, this doesn't have enough reviews, or sometimes this has too many reviews. Right now, it's kind of rare, but I can make a case for a product having too many reviews. Now, of course, as an author, I want to solicit reviews, but I want to solicit honest reviews. All right. So just to be sure, nobody's asking for 5-star reviews. We're just asking for reviews. Yeah. And if you give us 1 star, it's probably because we earned it. So I'm assuming people are making quality content, so they actually earn 5 stars. But Jason, I think like my favorite thing about what you said is like BSR doesn't matter as much. It's important. It's kind of vanity sometimes. Like, hey, #1 in my category, or like, and I say this top 1,000 book on Amazon. Yeah, like they're vanity. It's like, what does it actually mean? Now you might be able to use it as marketing to get attention, but it's not necessarily going to put any money in your pocket directly. But if you're getting reviews, that means way more than they just bought your book or they downloaded your book on Prime Day when it was free, or on Christmas when you did a free promotional day. And I've done that. 7,000 downloads. I take a screenshot from KDP and I'm like, what up? Look at this. But it's vanity metrics. It doesn't actually mean anything. It could be 6,999 people download it and are never going to look at it again. Reviews, they read it. Like 99+% chance they actually read at least some of your content, and they meant enough to them. They went on and left a review. And if they do that, hopefully they join your email list, depending how they discovered your book. So like if you're trying to use a book for business and generate leads and customers, like a top of the funnel type book, you want to see those reviews. If it doesn't have reviews, I mean, I could be cynical. You see a book published like 5 years ago with like 5 reviews, and they're using it as like a top of the funnel thing. I'm like, no one's going through that funnel, man.
Yeah.
Like, because if they were, you'd have reviews to show for it. So it's a great metric.
That's an interesting component of it, because really, I think what the consumer is doing is saying that the number of reviews is a proxy for quality. So, you look at the reviews and you say to yourself, it's got 1,400 reviews, that it's a 4.7, average. It has to be good, and that's what people are doing as a shortcut to the purchasing decision, I think. And so I think that's why it's so vital. I think, just to finish this reviews, for an author who's trying to work on a book, what I would encourage you to do is try to have benchmarks. Go for 20 reviews and focus that on as a priority, and then 100, and then 1,000. Now, I've got my best book has 360 reviews, something like that, Instagram Power. And the reviews, I know, help that book. I mean, I just seen over time that as the reviews have climbed, it has just stayed stuck up into the BSRs for the social media subcategories. So, but I think we should have an approach where we say, okay, I'm going to try to just focus on getting 20 reviews, then 100, then 1,000, which is aspirational. You get 1,000 reviews on an Amazon book, and you're permanently stuck into the top of a BSR. You won't fall out. And so, I mean, I think that's an important way to look at it. Now, let me just circle back to one other nuance here, which was what Michael said. I think that as consumers, we swim inside of subcategories or niches with books. So, for example, I don't ever look at fiction books. I don't even look at the categories. I just don't. Now some readers might be really sort of cosmopolitan about how they consume books, but I think more likely people get stuck into what they like, which is a subcategory, the genre that they really find value out of. For me, as a consumer of books, that's nonfiction, usually in marketing, e-commerce, branding, finance, those kind of those nerdy, boring categories. But I think that's what book consumers do, is they have a category they're in. So therefore, the categories that we're ranking in are vital. And little known fact, Chris, you know more about this than I do probably, but I know you can go to Amazon and ask that your book be listed in more than the 3 default categories that you get to pick when you set up a book that's a self-published book. And I don't know if it's up to 10, but you can ask to be in more categories. And that is probably a pro move, because of this idea that customers sort of stay in their swim lane in terms of genres or categories. I don't know what you guys have in terms of thoughts on that idea, but thought I'd mention it.
I've heard of that. I haven't done it myself, but I would suggest anytime you're contacting Amazon, this would be a great example. If you're contacting Amazon and say, "Hey, I would like my book to be listed in these other categories," give them a reason why, but give them a customer-centric reason why. To say, "Hey, customers in this category are probably looking for things along these lines, and my book really addresses that. And it's got great reviews, and it would benefit your customer, Amazon, to have it over there. And if you speak in kind of Amazon language, it can usually help you get what you want, as long as what you want is legit white hat above the table.
Yeah,
of course.
Totally. Yep. Any other thoughts? I want to make sure we spend time on ROAS here before we end the show.
I just have one
Kyle,
other question on reviews, and this is more of just me asking a question. Is it within the TOS? Like, if you were creating a Kindle book, could you actually create like a page halfway through your book with a QR code and just ask for people's not the review, but actually like feedback? Like, I'd love to know what you thought so far about my book, and then send them to like a survey or something like that. Or is that like not allowed?
I don't know of any call to action that's a violation of TOS unless it's incented in some inappropriate way. You can't buy reviews. You can't do that. That's a TOS violation, right? And you couldn't do that inside a book or off Amazon either if they found out about it. But to say, these are thoughts in progress. I have a second edition I'm working on. I'd love your feedback so I can make this book better. Those are all super legitimate inquiries. Now, you might end up with reviews that are like, here are the 14 spelling mistakes you made in the first chapter, which, wouldn't be productive review content. But, so you have to figure out, okay, how can I position this book as something that someone would like to leave a review in support of? That, to Chris's point, I like to use the phrase highest and best review. I would love your highest and best review. That's not asking for 5-star review. That's asking the customer to leave me their highest and best review that they're comfortable with. And so I think you want to solicit for something that gets you, a positive outcome, not a negative outcome. But there is certainly art and science to it for sure. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I was just thinking if you actually installed request in the book to go, not just to directly to the KDP, but actually get some feedback via survey or whatever. If they've given you that information and it's positive, then you could always obviously ask for them to, oh, would you mind sharing this on Amazon or KDP as a review or something like that as well. So
yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's talk about ROAS, you guys. I think return on ad spend is the marketing metric on Amazon we all love to think about. And I just want to explain it for book sellers who haven't used it, or for people who are interested in understanding how it works for books. The advertising program for Amazon works very similar if you're not used to it as it does for products, normal physical products. And you've got an opportunity to spend. Of course, the difference is if you self-published a Kindle book, you have zero cost of goods. What you have is your royalty structure. And so, for example, if you set up a book that's an exclusive book, Chris, correct me on any of this that you feel like I'm messing up, but let me just say it this way. If you set up a royalty deal with Amazon where you get 70% commission on every sale, and Amazon keeps 30%, if that's the deal you made, then you want to do the math for the return on ad spend and factor in that expense of the Amazon cost structure, and then do a simple calculation to understand where your break-even point is. If you spend $1 on advertising, did you get $1 back? Now, I would suggest to you that if you just do that, you spend $1 and get $1 back, you should do that as much as you can, scale it till it breaks, and really understand what that looks like in the back end of the Amazon advertising system. And you do that through setting up a bunch of campaigns, seeing what works, putting a little bit of money against them. And if you have a positive ROAS above your break-even point, then you double down, increase the daily spend, and let it continue to ride until you find an equilibrium point where you're, in essence, breaking even or losing money if you go any higher. That's my take on how to use Amazon advertising for book work that is tied to self-publishing books. You can also do it in support of traditionally published books. I have permission to publish my Instagram Power Book through McGraw. It's published by McGraw-Hill, but I can advertise against it or for it. And I also have permission to advertise for my e-commerce Power Book published by Morgan James, even though neither of those are self-published, but I can still use the Amazon advertising platform directly to promote those products. So open, around the table conversation about thoughts on advertising, ROAS, that kind of stuff.
I got a thought, which is I kind of have no business with it because I haven't published anything on KDP. But if I'm about to, hopefully with the next, it's taken much longer than I wanted, as usual with these things, but it is mostly done now. If it's an authority play, there's quite a good argument for saying that it depends on the business case that you've got there. So it's an authority play. If you're getting exposure and paying for exposure, even if you end up losing money, but you can then monetize it on the back end by getting new clients or sending up other products or so forth. There could be quite an argument for being quite aggressive about it, actually. Even, I don't mean just as a launch strategy, but I mean ongoing. The other thing,
especially if your funnel supports the back end sales,
exactly
outcomes.
Yeah. And the other thing that strikes me is, even if it's more of a pure profit play, and even if whether or not you have a back end, but if you want to make sure the front end is washing its face, as it were, that's terrible jargon. I'm speaking internet marketing jargon now. If you want to sell your product at a profit on Amazon, irrespective of what happens afterwards, then you've always got to think about the fact that on Amazon, this is the return on ad spend is only part of the picture, because it will help your organic ranking, and I presume this applies to books as well as physical products, which is my world that I'm comfortable with. And if so, then the value of an ad-driven sale is much greater than just that sale. And exactly how to evaluate that is pretty tricky. But I would say that in terms of mentality, at least, I'd be prepared to spend quite aggressively in that situation as well. So there are two situations where I can imagine, if I were doing it, that I would spend probably more aggressively and still hope to make a profit.
Yeah, totally.
Chris, you're the man who can actually speak to that as well as Jason. And what does it work that way, or am I deluding myself here?
Well, I think it goes back to kind of the beginning, where people think it's more complicated than it is, and it really isn't. It's here. This is your book. Here's your listing. Here's the price that you set, and based on all of the factors of your book, you will get this much money when it sells on Kindle, and you will get this much money when it sells on paperback. That's it. You can figure that number out before you even publish. If you just Google KDP royalty calculator, and you put in your page count, and you put in your price, and it'll tell you what your royalty is going to be. And that's it. And then compare that to how much you want to spend on ads. And then decide if you're looking at KDP as a profit center, where you're trying to make profit off the margin of your books, or you're using books as lead generation, where you're using it, look, I'm happy to break even to get my message out into the world. I don't know. I don't care, right? I'm not everybody's, I'm not a different person, but you can do each one of those things. But if people are slowing down and being like, oh, I can't move forward until I know what my royalty is. No, that's an excuse. You can figure out what your royalty is going to be right now for a 24-page book, 100-page book, 480-page book. Just Google it, KDP royalty calculator.
And on Amazon advertising platform, to get your ROAS, you just divide that into 1. So 1 divided by 0.7, if it's a 70% royalty structure, just as the example, would be 1.42 ROAS is break even. That's how you do that math. It's not complicated. So you just figure out your royalty rate, the actual, and then you divide it by 1, and it'll tell you a number, and then you just work towards achieving that number in your ad spend. Kyle, do I have all that right? What's your thought on all that?
That's right. I mean, a lot of the factors depend on your category, right? How much competition that you're in. Will you be able to spend and break even and get organic rank? That will depend on what your book is and who you're competing with, right? But I think in general, that premise will hold for books, and will also hold for physical products. And then it comes down to just your overall strategy. Like, what are you really trying to accomplish? Is your book going to be the top of funnel, basically as a lead gen to get new people into your system? And do you have opportunities baked into your book that link out to your website or to other funnels to try and drive more revenue? Or to Chris's point, is KDP your main revenue model, and you just want to drive sales from that standpoint? Now, if you only have one book on KDP, unless you're using one of Chris's models and it's a course as a book, right? You're probably going to need more than one KDP book if you go the classical route with it, in order to make any sort of real money for the long term, right? But maybe that's not the goal. Maybe it's just trying, like to Chris's point, you're trying to get the message out. So I kind of see it as, you use it as a front end to bring people in, would probably be my best use case for KDP. unless you're going with a broad catalog of books. And then it's the wide catalog approach that actually drives you long-term revenue, which will then ultimately probably be more along the lines of organic sales that come through over time. With a catalog approach is how you're going to optimize it.
Love that. All right, guys. Final thoughts around the table. We've talked about, a number of reviews. We talked about bestseller rankings and categories. Talked about ROAS and the Amazon ad platform. Any other final thoughts? And if not, then let's wrap it up.
Question. Based on your guys' experience, obviously you get paid royalty on like pages read. Have you noticed if pages read for KDP has any sort of impact on your ranking, your sales? If you get more read, do you see any growth in that, or is it just completely separate?
If there's a metric to track that, I don't know what it is. I actually looked the other day. I have like 2.5 million page reads, which I think is insane. But you guys know me. I'm going to use that as marketing. But that's another way to monetize content is through page reads. Amazon will, if you're in the Kindle Select program, they will pay you based on the page reads. Now, there's black hat ways and there's white hat ways. I'm not even going to mention the black hat ways. Don't manipulate. Just put out good content that people actually want to read. But to me, there's just such a benefit to go physical, which is just going to kind of take away. Like I don't focus honestly any energy at all at Kindle nominalized page reads, whatever it's called. That's not the type of content I'm putting out is specifically to be read on Kindle.
Yeah, me either. I think the most valuable thing you can do on the KDP platform is publish in all three modalities: the Kindle edition, the paperback edition, and the Audible for audio edition through acx.com. That combo is where you maximize your profit outcomes. And the Audible and specifically, I've heard over and over people say that's where you make the most money as an author, is on the Audible edition. And so, but of all the books I've published, only a couple have Audible editions. So it's kind of like knowing the path and walking the path are two different things, But in terms of just pages read, it's never been something I focused on either.
Okay.
It would work better on fiction books, I believe.
Probably. Okay, that makes sense. Well, at least when Michael does roll out his audio or his book, he'll already have like the audio voiceover ready to go because he's already got a cool British accent that he can just apply to. He doesn't have to pay anybody to actually read his book.
Available for reading your book, Jason, if you want me. But I'm not sure that would work with your brand. It wouldn't sound very Pacific Northwest or even.
Can you sound like a middle-aged Seattle guy from America?
I don't think I can. I guess this would be my best impression of a middle-aged Seattle guy, but I don't really know if it's authentic or not. So I'd better maybe not put myself forward for it.
That's pretty good.
Actually, your Texas accent isn't too shabby either.
God damn it. It's hotter than a skunk in here. Yeah, maybe I do. We're getting well done. Rabbit hole here. Let's wrap it up.
Guys.
Take us home, Jason.
I'm wrapping this thing up. Thanks everybody for a great conversation today about KDP metrics. As always, it's an honor. If you're listening to this show on the ecommerceleader.com podcast on a podcast player of choice, then feel free to check out the Call-In app, which is where we record this sort of the original content of it. And we'd love to have you follow us there. And follow along on any player that you'd like with the highest review. Your highest and best review would be greatly appreciated for the show. And gents, as always, it's an honor. Thanks so much for hanging out with us today.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, guys. Hey, Jason, you know what I want to do?
Okay.
I want to make a book so bad that's called the 1-star book, and it's intended to get 1-star reviews. And then people are like, I got to buy this. I got to see what this is all about. How can this book have 8,000?
1 star is the new 5-star.
I think we're still live, guys, by the way, on StreamYard.
No, we're not.
No,
we're only recording.
Recording.
We're not publishing.
It says live on my screen.
It says live on my screen as well, but yeah.
Yeah, but we're only recording.
Okay.
So I'll end it.